Welcome to Conversations That Awaken. This is a special series from A Course in Miracles that has inspired millions of readers around the world. Some see it as a spiritual masterpiece, others find it mysterious, challenging, or even controversial. Whatever brings you here, we invite you to leave your beliefs and your disbeliefs at the door. This is not a Bible study, this is not a sermon, and it is not about asking you to accept anyone else's truth. It is an invitation to investigate reality for yourself. I am Kim. In every episode, Joe and I will explore the text found in A Course in Miracles through 6 powerful lenses: science, philosophy, psychology, mysticism, direct experience, and everyday living. We'll ask difficult questions, we'll challenge assumptions, we'll laugh together, and we'll discover how these teachings can transform the way we see ourselves, our relationships, and the world around us. Whether you're new to A Course in Miracles or have studied it for decades, our purpose is simple: to uncover the timeless wisdom hidden beneath its words. We won't ask, what should we believe? We'll ask, what can we discover? Because awakening is not about collecting new ideas. It is about change in perception. It's about seeing clearly. It's about moving from fear to love, from separation to wholeness, from confusion to understanding. So take a deep breath, set aside everything you think you know, and join us for a special series in A Course in Miracles.
Have you ever had one of those days, or, maybe it's been a whole year, where you just feel like the way you look at the world is, well, fundamentally broken?
Oh, yeah.
Like the very lens you're using to view your life is just cracked. You're constantly categorizing things into good and bad, judging every situation, stressing over, every little detail, trying to optimize your morning routine, your relationships, your career. And at the end of the day, you're just left with this hollow exhaustion.
Right. It's a very modern kind of burnout. We spend so much energy trying to tweak and, optimize our lives on the surface.
Yeah.
But we almost never stop to question the underlying operating system that's running all those background calculations.
Yeah, exactly. And the text we're doing a deep dive into today, it argues that you are absolutely right to feel that way.
Oh, totally.
It says that the operating system isn't just a little buggy. It's not that you just need to download a patch or meditate for 10 minutes a day. It's saying the system is completely upside down. We're looking at an excerpt from a profoundly layered and frankly pretty radical spiritual and philosophical text today. Specifically, it's Chapter 14 of A Course in Miracles, a chapter titled Teaching for Truth.
Yeah, and it is a text that demands a lot from the reader. The framework it presents for achieving perfect peace requires you to question almost every assumption you've ever made about how reality actually functions.
Right. And I want to be clear about our mission here today for you, the listener. Our goal isn't to preach or, convert you to a specific theology.
No, not at all.
We're here to distill this incredibly dense material into practical, mind-bending insights about human perception, the nature of guilt, and how we actively construct our reality moment to moment. Because reading through this chapter, I just kept thinking of an analogy.
Okay.
We've been playing this massively complex, deeply frustrating video game our whole lives. We're constantly trying to level up, defeat bosses, avoid traps, hoard resources.
Right.
And this chapter is essentially a manual telling us that the rules we're following are actually glitches. We're playing a broken game, and we need to stop hitting the buttons and just look directly at the source code.
I like that. And according to the text, that source code is split into 2 entirely opposing thought systems. It sets up this binary.
Okay.
On one side, you have the logic of what it calls the ego. And on the other side, you have the logic of the Holy Spirit.
Okay, wait, time out.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, I have to stop you because you're throwing around words like Holy Spirit.
I know.
And my brain, and probably the brain of anyone listening who grew up in a traditional religious environment, is instantly going to Sunday school.
Sure.
I'm picturing church pews, dogmas, the whole 9 yards. I need you to explain this to me like I'm 5, because it sounds like this text is using that term to mean something entirely different from mainstream religion.
No, I'm glad you stopped me there, because the vocabulary of this text is honestly one of its biggest hurdles. It uses these traditional Judeo-Christian terms, but it totally strips them of their historical dogmatic baggage, and it redefines them as psychological, almost structural concepts.
Okay, so what does ego mean in this context? Because I hear that and I just think of Freud or, someone who's just super arrogant.
Right, yeah, forget Freud and get arrogance. In this text, The ego is a thought system built entirely on the foundational idea of separation.
Separation.
Yeah, it's the belief that you are an isolated, vulnerable body, completely disconnected from your source and from everyone else, just fighting for survival in a hostile universe. It is basically the operating system of fear.
Okay, wow. And the Holy Spirit.
So the Holy Spirit in this framework is not a bird or a ghost.
Right.
It's described as the voice for truth within your own mind. It's the memory of your actual unseparated state.
Oh, I see.
Think of it as an alternative operating system, one based entirely on unity, love, and the recognition that separation never actually occurred. So when the text talks about these two logics, it's talking about two completely incompatible ways of interpreting reality.
And it does not pull its punches when describing the ego's logic. I mean, it says its conclusions are literally insane.
Yes.
That they point directly to darkness and death. It basically says the logic of the world leads to nothing because its goal is nothing.
Yeah, it views the ego's world as a completely closed-off system of denial. But the really chilling part, the part that explains why it's so hard to just snap out of it, is a specific line the text uses. It says, "Your dream is sacred to you."
See, that line stopped me in my tracks. Because it implies we aren't just accidentally using this insane logic, we're fiercely devoted to it.
Exactly. We've invested our entire identity into this closed-off system. We made these thoughts, we love them, and we defend them. The text views our everyday reality as this elaborate defense mechanism. We are so terrified of the simple, unified truth because accepting it would mean the death of our isolated, special individual identity, right?
Right.
So we create wildly complex illusions to hide from it.
I do want to push back on calling the world's logic insane, though. Because from the inside, it feels incredibly rational.
Sure.
I mean, if my roof is leaking, I find a bucket, I call a roofer, I pay them money. That is a logical sequence of events. To call my attempt to fix my life insane feels dismissive of how reality actually functions for us.
I hear that. I do. But let's look at the mechanism of a dream. Think about the last time you had a nightmare where, say, a monster was chasing you. Inside the dream, what is your logic?
Well, I need to run. I need to hide behind a door or, find a weapon.
Right. And inside the parameters of the dream, finding a weapon is a completely rational, logical, problem-solving action.
Yeah.
But what is the actual ultimate solution to the nightmare?
To just wake up. Because the monster isn't there in the first place.
Exactly. The ego offers endless, highly complex solutions within the dream. It says, build a better weapon, get a better job, find more attractive partners, secure your borders.
Right, fix the roof.
Right. But none of those solutions actually end the fundamental underlying anxiety because they're solving a problem that isn't the root issue.
Wow.
The Holy Spirit's logic says, wake up, the threat isn't real. The text states that we have set ourselves the task of sharing what cannot be shared, which is illusions. And because our minds are so deeply twisted in this dream logic, we can't be handed the simple truth directly.
We just fight it, right? I mean, if I'm dreaming about a monster and a character in the dream runs up to me and says, hey, this isn't real, I'm going to shove them out of the way and keep running, I'll think they're crazy.
You'd view them as a threat to your survival strategy.
Yeah.
The text notes that those who choose to be deceived will merely attack direct approaches. So it introduces a necessary workaround, which is the concept of undoing. Yeah, we have to dismantle our false learning indirectly. The capacity to wake up is within us, but we have to be willing to look at the very foundation of our thought system and consciously let it be dismissed.
Which feels like trying to pull out the rug while you're still standing on it.
It does.
I mean, if we can't just learn the truth directly, the text says we have to adopt a specific posture first. We have to become what it calls the happy learner.
Yes. And the prerequisite for becoming a happy learner is quite a bitter pill to swallow.
Okay.
You first have to recognize that your current devotion to the ego's goals is the exact thing making you miserable.
It says we believe that misery is happiness.
Yeah.
Which is wild. We have somehow convinced ourselves that the stress, the endless striving, the constant problem solving of the ego's world is what will eventually bring us peace. We think, if I just suffer through these next 6 months of this terrible job, I'll get the promotion and then I'll be happy.
Right. We undertake to learn to do what we can never do. We're trying to extract permanent peace from a temporary shifting system. The text calls this having faith in nothing.
But the text takes this idea of nothing to an extreme that I frankly find really difficult to accept.
Let's hear it.
There is a quote in this section detailing how the happy learner views the world. It says, a little piece of glass, a speck of dust, a body or a war are one to you. I have to stop and challenge this. How can the text possibly justify leveling out the value of a literal speck of dust in an entire global war? That feels incredibly insulting to real human suffering. From any normal perspective, that sounds completely detached from reality.
It is deeply jarring, and it's meant to be. To understand it, we have to look at the metaphysical premise the text is operating on. The fundamental axiom of this philosophy is, truth is true, and nothing else matters.
Okay.
The corollary is that truth is eternal, unchanging, and perfectly unified. Therefore, anything that changes, degrades, suffers, or dies is, by definition, not truth. It is illusion. It's what the text categorizes as nothing.
Okay, but a war causes visceral pain. People die. A speck of dust just sits on a table.
Let's follow the text logic, though. If the entire physical universe, the realm of separation, is an illusion generated by the ego, then both the dust and the war are made of the exact same substance, nothingness.
I see.
If you place value on a war, if you get emotionally entangled in the horror of it as a reality, you are validating the illusion. You're saying the ego's world of separation, bodies, and death is real.
Wow.
If you place value on a shiny piece of glass like a diamond, you're doing the exact same thing. You're declaring that a temporary physical fragment has real, enduring substance.
I see the logical consistency, but it requires a complete detachment from how we emotionally experience life.
Yeah, but the text isn't telling you to lack compassion for suffering. It's telling you that the psychological burden of sorting, weighing, and judging illusions is destroying your mind. By valuing different parts of the illusion differently, saying this part is terrible and this part is wonderful, you add a massive burden to your already exhausted mind.
I'm trying to picture this mechanically in the brain. It's like being trapped in a massive, infinitely cluttered hoarder's house.
Okay, yeah.
And you feel this intense pressure to organize it. You're putting old newspapers in one pile, broken toys in another, categorizing everything by importance. But then someone flicks a switch and you realize the entire house and everything in it is just a hologram.
Oh, that's good.
You've been exhausting yourself, sorting light projections. The burden isn't the physical weight of the objects. The burden is the cognitive load of trying to make sense of something that isn't actually there.
That is a phenomenal way to illustrate the cognitive load the text is talking about. We love our complex sorting systems. We'd rather, as the text says, make palaces and royal robes out of nothing and pretend we're kings, than accept the simple, unadorned truth. To become a happy learner, you aren't just passively receiving new information. You have to give everything you have previously learned to the Holy Spirit to be aggressively unlearned.
It is a process of clearing the slate, which requires addressing the biggest, ugliest item on that slate. If we're talking about unlearning the ego's thought system, the text points to one specific mechanism that serves as the engine for this whole illusion, the heavy lifter of the ego's world, guilt.
Guilt is the absolute bedrock of the ego's philosophy. The text describes guilt as interference, not salvation. And it refuses to offer any gray area here. It states there is no compromise that you can make with guilt. You are guilty or guiltless, bound or free, unhappy or happy.
Let me stop you there, because the text brings back some of that heavy religious terminology here. It frames this choice between guilt and guiltlessness as a choice between the crucifixion and the resurrection.
Yes.
Again, I need an ELI 5 on this, because historically those are physical events involving a specific person on a cross, but here the text seems to be using them as psychological states that we are experiencing right now.
Yes, exactly. The text reinterprets crucifixion not as a historical event to be worshipped, but as the ultimate symbol of the ego. The crucifixion is the belief that attack is real, that bodies can be destroyed, and most importantly, that sin and guilt demand punishment and death. When you condemn someone or when you condemn yourself, you are actively choosing the crucifixion in your own mind.
And the resurrection.
The resurrection is the awakening from that dream. It's the realization that the mind cannot be killed,
Right.
that innocence is invulnerable, and that guilt is entirely fabricated. It is the choice for freedom. And the text says you are making this choice every single second.
But it goes further than just saying we should try to forgive people. It makes a staggering philosophical claim. It says guilt is wholly without cause, that it literally has no origin point. How does it justify that logically? Because I can point to 100 things I've done that caused harm, which seems like a pretty clear cause for my guilt.
The logic relies on the nature of God, or the source, as defined by the text. It posits that God is the only cause in existence, and God is perfect love.
Right.
A perfect unified love cannot create fear, punishment, or guilt. Therefore, if God did not create it, It has no actual cause.
Yeah.
And the text states emphatically the causeless cannot be.
So if the cause doesn't exist, the effect can exist. So the guilt I feel isn't a reaction to reality, it's a hallucination I'm generating.
Precisely. You are generating it to keep the illusion of separation intact.
Hmm.
Guilt requires a perpetrator and a victim. It requires two separate entities. As long as you feel guilt or project guilt onto someone else, you're proving to yourself that the dream of separation is real.
This brings to mind a metaphor for how we operate day to day. It's like we're standing in a dark room and we're pushing with all our physical and mental strength against a heavy steel door to keep it closed.
Yeah.
We're sweating, our muscles are shaking, we're terrified of whatever monster we think is on the other side. Holding that door shut is our guilt. We think holding onto it, blaming others, punishing ourselves is keeping us safe.
Right.
But the reality is there is no monster. We are just trapping ourselves in the dark. And the text is simply saying, just let go of the door.
And letting go of the door requires a radical change in how we interact with others. The text issues a mandate that is incredibly difficult to practice.
Okay.
It says, teach no one he has hurt you, for if you do, you teach yourself that what is not of God has power over you.
Okay, I am going to throw a massive red flag on the play here.
Figured.
Teach no one they have hurt you. Let's look at that through the lens of modern psychology. We're taught about toxic relationships, about narcissism, about setting firm boundaries and speaking our truth when we're harmed.
Yes.
If someone actively abuses me, you're saying, this text wants me to just smile and pretend it didn't happen. That sounds like a recipe for becoming a perpetual victim.
It is crucial to understand that the text is not advocating for behavioral martyrdom. It doesn't say you shouldn't physically remove your body from a dangerous situation. It is talking about what you do in your mind.
Okay.
It's talking about the mechanics of vulnerability.
Explain that mechanism. How does holding someone accountable in my mind hurt me?
Look at the phrase again. If you do, you teach yourself that what is not of God has power over you. The text argues that the cost of giving is receiving. In this closed system, whatever you offer to another, you are simultaneously reinforcing in your own mind.
Oh.
If you point a finger at someone and say, you are guilty, you have permanently damaged my soul, you are inherently declaring, I am a fragile, breakable thing. I'm a victim to the outside world.
You are confirming your own weakness.
You are confirming the ego's premise. By trying to lock them in the prison of guilt, you lock yourself in there with them. The text says that by refusing to allow a brother to think he can actually hurt your core true self, you teach him that perfect innocence is his reality.
Right.
You teach him he is not a monster. And by extending that realization to him, the realization bounces back and eliminates your own invulnerability.
So if I walk away from a toxic situation, but I spend the next 10 years bitterly ruminating on how they ruined my life, I am the one keeping the damage alive. I am keeping the heavy door shut.
You keeping the nightmare running.
I understand the logic, but the sheer willpower required to override our natural defensive instincts feels impossible. And the text seems to anticipate this, because it leads into what I think is the most intense friction point in the entire chapter.
Oh yeah, the big one.
It essentially tells us we aren't equipped to make these kinds of choices. The text argues that making decisions for yourself is actively destructive.
The surrender of autonomy. This is where many readers hit a wall.
I certainly hit a wall. I mean, it explicitly says, whenever you choose to make decisions for yourself, you are thinking destructively and the decision will be wrong.
Right.
And its solution is to leave all decisions to the Holy Spirit by simply saying, decide for me. I have to be honest, that sounds terrifying. It sounds like joining a cult, giving up all free will, and becoming a passive robot. Where is the personal agency in Tekako? Decide for me.
To understand why it asks for this surrender, we have to look at how the text defines your will. It isn't asking you to give up your free will. It's arguing that in your current state, heavily influenced by the ego, you don't actually have any idea what your true will is.
What do you mean by that? If I decide I want a cup of coffee, that's my will.
The text asserts that your core fundamental will is actually identical to God's will. They're the same thing, a desire for perfect peace, complete joy, and total unity.
Okay.
But because we believe we're separate, isolated bodies, we are deeply confused about how to achieve that. We think we want things that will actually cause us more anxiety. We think we want revenge or status or isolation. So we suffer from what the text calls the impossible burden of deciding what we want and need alone.
The impossible burden. I mean, we see this everywhere today. Decision fatigue is a documented psychological crisis. We are paralyzed by having to choose between 50 types of toothpaste, let alone navigating the moral complexities of our careers and relationships.
And it goes deeper than just picking toothpaste. The text points out that no thought or action of ours is isolated. Every decision you make influences a constellation larger than anything you ever dreamed of.
The butterfly effect.
Exactly. There's a massive butterfly effect to every choice. When you, with your incredibly limited ego-driven perspective, try to calculate all those variables to ensure your own safety, you inevitably fail. You calculate based on fear, guilt, and past trauma. You decide what you need to be saved from, and you always get it wrong.
So saying decide for me isn't about becoming a puppet. It's more like realizing you're trying to render a massive 3D video file on a 1990s laptop and the computer is crashing.
Yes.
Surrendering is just offloading the processing power to a supercomputer that actually has access to all the data.
That is exactly the mechanism. It's admitting I do not have the vantage point to see the ripples of this choice. I trust the guide who sees the whole picture. The text promises that when you let the Holy Spirit understand your true will for you, decision-making loses all its anxiety.
Wow.
It says decisions will become as easy and as right as breathing. You won't be agonizing over pros and cons. You will simply be moved to act gently, as if you were being carried down a quiet path in summer.
It sounds incredibly restful. It even mentions that this surrender is more restful than sleep, because when we sleep, we often just take our ego and our guilt into our dreams with us. We wake up exhausted, but the surrender is a waking rest.
And when we begin to practice this, when we surrender our frantic decision-making and actively practice seeing others as guiltless, the text says we step into a perceptual state called the circle of atonement.
Okay, let's explore the circle of atonement because it sounds like a fantasy force field. What mechanically happens when we enter this state?
The circle of atonement isn't a physical place. It's a state of mind where you have actively stripped away all your past judgments and grievances. You stand within this circle acknowledging only perfect purity.
Okay.
And because minds are joined, your refusal to project guilt acts like a magnet. You attract tortured, fearful minds to join you in that peace simply by not offering them anything to fight against. And it is strictly within this specific, non-judgmental state of mind that the text says miracles occur.
Right. Chapter 14 spends a lot of time on the mechanics of miracles. It starts with a really beautiful, simple metaphor. It compares the mind to a mirror. It says the earth can reflect heaven or hell, God or the ego, entirely depending on what we choose to hold up to the mirror.
Miracles are what happen when we choose to reflect holiness. When you wipe the mirror clean of the ego's dark, distorted images, the light of God naturally, effortlessly shines upon it. But there is a foundational rule about how these miracles operate, and it's a concept that completely shatters our normal framework. The text emphasizes that there is no order of difficulty in miracles.
No order of difficulty. I struggle with this one just as much as the speck of dust versus the war.
Yeah.
From my viewpoint, there is an obvious hierarchy of difficulty in the world. Curing a terminal illness is massive. Forgiving someone for cutting me off in traffic is small. You're telling me the text views those as requiring the exact same amount of effort?
To the ego, yes, the hierarchy is very real because the ego orders everything by physical magnitude and judgment. But the text says the miracle transcends this entirely because it's based on equality. Think about the math of infinity.
Okay, let's do the math.
If you take a massive number, say 1 billion, and you take a tiny number, like 1, in our world, there is a huge difference between them. But if you compare both of those numbers to infinity, what happens?
They both effectively become 0. The difference between them is irrelevant compared to infinity.
Exactly. The text states the power of God and not of you engenders miracles. Because the power generating the miracle is limitless, it's maximal at all times, it doesn't calculate the size of the illusion it's correcting. It offers its total absolute power to every call for help. It doesn't matter if you judge the problem as a whisper or a scream. A call for help is answered with perfect love. There is no order of difficulty because the solution is always the same and is always absolute.
The solution is always the same because it categorizes every action into only 2 possible buckets. The text says there is only love and a call for love.
Yes.
Which is a beautiful sentiment, but I want to dig into the psychology of this. If someone is screaming at me, lying about me, trying to ruin my reputation, how does the text mechanically justify viewing that hostile attack as simply a call for love?
To understand the mechanics of this, we need to spend some time on a very specific psychological concept the text introduces here: dissociation.
Let's go deep on this because dissociation sounds very clinical. We usually hear it in the context of severe trauma.
In modern psychology, dissociation is often a defense mechanism where a person disconnects from their thoughts, feelings, or sense of identity to cope with overwhelming stress. The text uses it in a similar but broader philosophical way. It defines dissociation as a distorted thinking process where a mind maintains two completely incompatible, mutually exclusive belief systems at the same time.
Give me a real-world example of what that looks like in our daily lives.
Cognitive dissonance is a mild form of it. Imagine someone who deeply believes they are a kind, patient, loving person. That's belief system A.
Okay.
But then they get cut off in traffic and they fly into a rage, screaming and wishing physical harm on the other driver. That's belief system B. These two systems, I am perfect love and I am capable of murderous rage, cannot both be true simultaneously. So how does the mind survive this contradiction?
It has to keep them separated. It puts up a wall. I'm a good person, but that guy made me angry. It's a special circumstance.
Exactly. It keeps them apart in the dark. As long as they're separated in the mind, they both seem real. The ego's entire existence relies on this fracturing.
Wow.
But the text says that if you bring those two incompatible belief systems together, out of the dark and into the light of awareness, their incompatibility becomes instantly obvious.
Yeah.
And the one that is false simply vanishes.
So applying this to the person attacking me, the text says, what needs no protection does not defend itself.
Yes. When someone attacks you, the ego's logic sees a valid threat. It says, they are evil, they are a monster, I must attack back. But the Holy Spirit's logic looks at the attacker and sees a severely dissociated mind. It sees someone who has lost touch with their true identity of perfect love, and they're terrified of the dark room they've locked themselves in. They're lashing out because they're in pain. The attack is actually a clumsy, confused, desperate cry for the very love they are aggressively pushing away.
It's like a terrified animal caught in a trap. If you reach out to help it, it will bite you, not because it hates you, but because it is utterly consumed by fear and thinks your hand is another threat.
And if you respond to that bite by hitting the animal, you confirm its fear. You prove to it that the world is hostile. If you respond to an attack with an attack, you confirm to the other person that they're right to be terrified, and you lock yourself in the trap with them.
Yeah.
But if you respond with a miracle, by refusing to see them as guilty, by seeing their attack merely as a confused call for love, you do something profound. You bring the light to their darkness.
You bring the two incompatible systems, their projected guilt and your recognized innocence, together.
The text describes the mechanism perfectly. It says, the light of guiltlessness shines guilt away, because when they are brought together, the truth of one must make the falsity of its opposite perfectly clear. The illusion of the attack simply dissolves because it has no substance.
It's an incredible mental discipline. It requires you to completely ignore the form of the attack, the harsh words, the betrayal, and only respond to the content underneath, which is always just that desperate call for help. And the text warns us that the ego is obsessed with form. It loves to analyze the specific complex details of our interpersonal dramas. But the text dismisses all of that complexity as utterly meaningless.
The ego thrives on complexity because it hides the underlying simplicity of the choice we have to make.
So we've outlined this massive radical shift in perception, but I'm sitting here thinking, this sounds beautiful in theory, but I still get annoyed when the Wi-Fi drops. How do we know if we're actually getting it? How do we know if we're successfully becoming that happy learner and stepping into the circle of atonement? The text doesn't leave this ambiguous. It gives us a very specific metric, what it calls the test of truth.
And it is perhaps the most uncompromising, intimidating metric in the entire book.
It really is. I'm going to read it directly. It says, if you are wholly free of fear of any kind, and if all those who meet or even think of you share in your perfect peace, then you can be sure that you have learned God's lesson and not your own.
Wholly free of fear of any kind, not just the big fears, but the subtle anxieties.
Right.
And not just your peace, but everyone who even thinks of you must share in it. If that's not happening, the text says you still have dark lessons in your mind that are actively hurting you and everyone around you.
Which, let's be painfully honest, means I have failed the test. I fail it every morning before I even finish my coffee.
We all do.
It's a terrifying standard. But the beauty of this chapter is that it doesn't just hand you an impossible grade and walk away. It gives a highly practical, mechanical application for what to do when we inevitably fail that test. When our peace is disturbed, it provides a specific mental reset. And this is something anyone can use, regardless of their belief system. It says, when your peace is threatened, say to yourself, I do not know what anything, including this, means. And so I do not know how to respond to it. And I will not use my own past learning as the light to guide me now.
That phrase, I will not use my own past learning, gets to the core of why we suffer. Think about how often our past traumas, our past relationships, our old resentments dictate our present reactions.
It's constant. I mean, if someone uses a certain tone of voice that reminds me of an old boss who fired me, my body instantly goes into fight or flight mode. I'm reacting to a ghost from 10 years ago, not the person standing in front of me.
The text argues that the ego tells us that knowledge is power. It tells us that we need to hoard our past experiences, build walls, and figure things out on our own to stay safe.
Yeah.
But our attempts to keep this power for ourselves have actually made us blind. We have taught ourselves how to construct our own prisons out of past pain.
It goes back to a metaphor of trying to navigate a city. It's like being dropped in the middle of Tokyo, but the only thing you have in your hand is a heavily marked up map of New York City from 1995.
Right, yeah.
And you're gripping this map so tightly, someone walks up to help you, and you look at your map and say, no, it says there should be a subway station here. You're lying to me.
That's perfect.
Our past experiences are the wrong map. But we grip onto it because we're terrified of the vulnerability of being lost. We have to be willing to drop the map entirely to say, I do not know where I am, I do not know what the situation means, in order to actually see the reality in front of us.
Dropping the map is the ultimate act of intellectual and spiritual humility. I do not know. The text says that only those who remember always that they know nothing will learn everything. The moment you look at a situation and say, I know exactly why this is happening and who is to blame, you've dragged your dead past into the living present.
Yeah.
And as the text warns, your learning gives the present no meaning at all. You're just projecting an old, dark movie onto a blank screen. By admitting you do not know, you stop the projection. You clear the mirror. You open the door for a higher logic to show you what is actually there.
You're actively firing the ego as your teacher and leaving the position open.
And the text guarantees that if you do this, you will learn. It means a beautiful promise. Whenever you fully realize that you know not, peace will return.
We have journeyed through some massive tectonic shifts in how to view reality today. We started by looking at how exhausting it is to operate the ego's complex, insane system of separation. We explored the paradox of being a happy learner, which requires recognizing that our pursuit of the ego's goals is what's making us miserable. We dug into the heavy, causeless burden of guilt and how projecting it onto others just locks us in a dark room. We challenged the terrifying concept of surrendering our decision-making to escape the impossible burden of isolation. We looked at the mechanics of dissociation and how recognizing an attack as a mere call for love is the key to miracles. And finally, the power of admitting, I do not know.
It's a complete inversion of how the world teaches us to survive. It asks us to trade our armor for complete vulnerability, promising that true vulnerability is the only actual safety.
It is a lot to process, but as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring this directly back to you, the listener. You don't have to adopt this entire metaphysical theology today. You don't have to agree with every point about the illusion of the universe, but you can experiment with the mechanics of it. The next time you find yourself in a conflict, when your blood pressure is spiking, when you're gripping that map of New York, absolutely certain you know exactly why the other person is a monster and you're the victim, just try the experiment.
Just try it.
Pause. Drop the map. Try saying to yourself, I do not know what this means, and I will not use my past learning to guide me now. Just see what happens to the tension in your mind. See what happens to that heavy steel door you've been holding closed.
It is the most practical experiment in peace you can undertake.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, drawing from the text's assertion that we ultimately share a single, unified identity. If the mechanics of this chapter are correct, and you can only perceive your own innocence by first acknowledging it in someone else, who is the one person in your life you're currently refusing to see as guiltless? Who is the person you are insisting must remain in the dark room? And more importantly, what is keeping them trapped in that dark room actually costing you?
Thank you for listening. If today's conversation resonated with you, please take a moment to like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may benefit from these reflections on A Course in Miracles and the deeper questions of life. Your support allows us to continue creating conversations that explore consciousness, reality, love, forgiveness, and what it truly means to awaken. I'm Kim Kaur, and it is my privilege to introduce Jo Bandra. Jo is an author, philosopher, speaker, healthcare technology pioneer, and a lifelong explorer of humanity's greatest questions. For more than 3 decades, he has worked at the intersection of science and medicine, while pursuing an equally passionate exploration of A Course in Miracles. His first book, Finding Neve, is a transformative journey into self-discovery and the search for lasting happiness. His second book, Body, Mind, and Machine, shares his remarkable career in healthcare technology and the evolution of a profession dedicated to improving human lives. His upcoming work, The Nature of Reality, brings together science, philosophy, psychology, mysticism, and direct experience to explore one of humanity's oldest questions. What is reality really? Through every conversation, Jo invites us to question our assumptions, look beyond appearances, and discover a deeper understanding of ourselves, each other, and the extraordinary universe we share. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and above all, keep awakening.
Life often feels like an endless list of tasks, constant noise and distractions, pulling us in every direction. We're all searching for happiness, but what if we've been looking in the wrong places all along?
This was Nevaeh's journey. Lost in the noise, she felt cut off from the peace and happiness she longed for. Until she met Jo Bandra, an unconventional, insightful philosopher with a different perspective. Jay, as he is simply known, didn't hand her a map. He gave her something far more valuable, a compass, a way to turn inward, navigate her own thoughts, and uncover the clarity hidden beneath the chaos.
Readers around the world have been touched and inspired by Finding Nevaeh.
Your journey to inner peace begins now. Get your copy of Finding Nevaeh, available on Amazon and at findingnevaeh.org, or listen to the audiobook on Audible, Spotify, Apple, and other platforms.